My name is Arlene Hall, and my business is Island Organics, soap and candle manufacturing company. We create handmade organic skincare, bath and body care, organic candles, and other body supplies. About 5 years ago, I experienced something with one of my daughters who had gotten psoriasis, and I thought of all the things we can do to help her. So I wanted to use bush medicine on her skin and thought of a way that I can incorporate it in something that she can use every day. And I discovered soap making, and that's how Island Organics started. Because of that grant from Invest TCI, I was able to do a lot of the things I wanted to do to expand the soap business. The rewarding part is actually hearing the stories from the customers who've used our products. I would say take the leap, get your business license, get all of your ducks in a row, and go and make the application, because they make it as simple and as easy, and they actually help to get you through the process of obtaining the grant. So it's been a dream and it's been very easy. So I would say go ahead and provide all the information that's necessary and apply for the grant.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another session of a collaborative effort between TC Invest and TCI Backyard Farmers. Let me give a shout out to all the Backyard Farmers admin. That would be Teresa, Faye, Adina, and our founding member, Ms. Anya Valik, Anya Pratt, but we call her Anya Valik. Yes, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Mr. Jones. Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is the fourth session of Backyard Farmers for Profit, taking your backyard farm to the next level. This evening's speaker is none other than Mr. Jimmy Jones. Now, Mr. Jones is actually Barbadian in birth, and he's married to Miss Sarah Lee Jones, Jamaican. They both moved over to Belize in 1999, and he was trained as a customs broker, but was an entrepreneur by heart. And in 2008, he was afforded a scholarship to attend a month of training at Morningstar Fishermen in Tampa, Florida, to be trained in aquaponics. Oh, this is going to be interesting this evening. Upon completion of this training, he returned home, and with no money in the bank or an investor, he took up 6 marked out layout for his vision of his aquaponics farm in his own backyard. And with much work, continued, studied, and small personal investments within his vision, he started his aquaponics farm in 2011. That's with him and his wife. Yes, they were forced with a steep learning curve, but for the first few years, yeah, it was a challenge, but determination and commitment pulled them through. And in 2014, they transitioned from aquaponics to hydroponics, and started a new company called Belizean Fresh. With much more investment, Belizean Fresh has taken off. Mr. Jones, it's going to be interesting hearing from you this evening. Um, Welcome, and can't wait to hear what you have to say this evening, sir.
Thank you. Can I screen share?
Yes, you can. You can. Hezron
Okay,
is
good.
good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. It is good to share with you my story, our story, really, my wife and myself. Um, and I hope that by the end of it, you would have been inspired, encouraged, and it would get your creative juices going and see that there's lots of potential, but there's also lots of work. So let me screen share for you and share with you my PowerPoint presentation. But yeah, so while we wait, and it's been a long journey, many years of trial and error. And I'm sure that no entrepreneur or business owner ever has it all smooth. Um, your vision, you see the end at the beginning. What you don't see is the process in between. And the process in between is what determines whether or not you will be a success or not. So let me just share with you my presentation, and then I'll be looking forward to your questions afterwards. So Belizean Fresh, the story. I am Jimmy A. Jones. As you can see here, I'm going to be talking about backyard farming for profit, taking your backyard farm to the next level. Now, for those of you who might think that the picture of me there with some crazy eyes and a big fish is a little funny, it actually is, but this was the start of my journey with aquaponics. I had the opportunity to go to the fisheries department in Belize, and they showed me some tilapia. This is a red tilapia here. And they gave me one. I put it in the back of our vehicle, talked with the farm technician for about half an hour, drove home, talked with him here at my site for another 5 minutes. And then I took the fish out, was going to get ready to gut it and scale it and probably fillet it. So I poured some water in a bucket. As you can see, it's a big fish. And I put the fish in there, went to do something and came back and the fish was swimming. So when I saw that, I said, this is, for, pardon the term, but this is idiot proof. I can't miss if I get into doing fish, tilapia. So that actually started my journey into aquaponics. So the picture you can see here is when I started with the fish, and the other picture with the hydroponic system is where we are today. So let me just take you forward on the journey. The early days, I was so anxious to start, couldn't wait to get going. So I built a screen house and started growing some plants, learning how to grow plants because I did not have a background in agriculture at all. As a matter of fact, even though I'm a black man, I used to say I have a black thumb, meaning they usually say that when you're very good with plants, you have a green thumb. But anything I attempted to grow would die, couldn't last 2 weeks. But I was determined to learn because I thought that this was an answer, an idea that I could do, something that I could do as a business, and I really wanted it to happen. So you can see we started with the screen house and we kept going, and then we started with the fish. We started to keep fish on our veranda. The house you see is my actual house. This is where we started out at this house. I actually still live here, but we have another house that we hope to move into soon. But this is where it all started. So these are the early days of learning, trial and error, and trying to figure out what is going on and how to get it done. And then we started to make some steps. On your left, where you can see the containers, if you can see my mouse, this was my first aquaponic system that I had built. This was a test system. I wanted to prove the system before I made any massive investments, although I was gung-ho and already started, as you can see on the right-hand side. But I ran the first test and we grew our first aquaponics produce out of this small system. This was a 4x8 system, something that is pretty cheap. You can see the container at the back here is where I have the fish. These are some filtration systems, and this is where I grow the plants right here. Over to the right-hand side, if you look in the background, you can see that system right over here. And all these other tanks here, 1,000-gallon tanks where I raise tilapia. And these cement structures you see here are actually raceways or grow beds for the part of the aquaponic system. This is where we would grow the vegetables using a raft system, similar to this on the left-hand side, but just bigger. So these are the beginnings, working the vision. As I said in the readout, as was said, when I came back in 2008, none of what you see here existed, none of it at all. I didn't even have a fence. So I just envisioned what the outcome was going to be. And I just took pieces of sticks, marked out what you see here with sticks, and started to go after it. After much prayer and some interesting connections, we got some help from the group that sponsored me to go do the training. They came to visit to see what I was up to and what I was going to be doing with the training. And when they saw where we were and what we were doing, they decided to invest some monies into our startup project. So we were growing and growing well. So you can see on the left-hand side, those cement structures that you saw earlier has now become the production system on your left. Growing kale, Swiss chard, lettuce, various things. We grew sweet basil in there, etc. And if you look through that same photograph to the back, to the green building, over there is where our other home is, right next to the same property. And you will see a big open space between the greenhouse where the plants are and the building in the background. And that is where I wanted to expand our business to. So the structure on your right, the empty greenhouse, meaning it have no plants, is where we took a big risk. We applied for grants. We got some grants, and we also applied for a loan so we could really expand to a really good commercial level. And we invested and we built this structure, imported greenhouse and everything, imported system. And by that time, we were transitioning out from aquaponics to hydroponics because we ran into some issues with aquaponics. Don't get me wrong, I think aquaponics is absolutely spectacular. I love it and I intend to do it again. But for the monies available to me at the time, I could not invest in the kind of filtration system that I needed. At that time, they were really, really expensive. You get some much cheaper now, but they were really, really expensive. I couldn't afford it. And therefore, we ran into lots of issues. So I decided, look, From the beginning, I knew I wanted to do this as a commercial project. I wanted to make money from this and live from this. So I decided, hey, in business, you have to eliminate the risks and give yourself the best chance to succeed. So we eliminated the fish part of it, which was very difficult for me to do, but we did that. And then we went strictly hydroponics. This was in 2015, I believe, that we constructed this new greenhouse structure. This building is 132 feet long by 32 feet wide. And uh, it was an awesome facility. So at this point, we were beginning to figure out the business and understand who we were. We were discovering our distinctive, what made us different from everybody else. And we just have 3 points, 3 things here that we mentioned, but there are other things. One, we were local. And because we were local, the delivery time and shelf life of our product was much higher than the imported products. So we were, when the persons came to the supermarket to buy, the product was very, very fresh. So we were local and fresh, and our quality was outstanding. It was very, very, very high. So the demands for our product grew, and we created a space in the market for ourselves. Even though it was small, but we had a committed few supermarkets and restaurants and resorts that really committed to us and loved our products, and we continued to grow. And we were feeling really good that we were going forward and making some strides. And then catastrophe happened. In 2016, remember I told you the new greenhouse, this one on your right-hand side here, maybe on your left when you look at it on your screen, but this one here where you see the cursor moving, this was constructed in the end of 2015 is when it was finished, and we got it producing in February of 2016. In August of 2016, Hurricane Earl hit Belize and totally devastated both of our greenhouses, as you can see here. So we were completely out of business, no way to generate income, having to rebuild. And it was a daunting task. It was a sight to see, as you can see. But with grit and resolve, we were determined to come back. So we started over again. And we rebuilt on your right-hand side. This is the original greenhouse that we started in, where you saw the raft system. We reconstructed that, rebuilt it, got that operational first. And then on the other side, we tore down that metal building that was destroyed. We rebuilt a new building with a donation from a Canadian group of friends that visit Belize every year. And they heard of our situation, decided to get involved, and connected with people who donated all of these items you see here, except the production system, but the entire building was donated. So they shipped it in a container to Belize, and we got it constructed again. So we were back in action. On your left, this is the small greenhouse, or on my left, this is the small greenhouse currently as it is. In production now, and you can see I use different types of production systems. And on your right, this is as it is, well, not today, this is maybe a couple of months ago, but this is what the completely rebuilt greenhouse looks like now. So just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts, and then we'll open up for questions. Key takeaways, in order to take your backyard farming to become profitable and taking it to the next level, you need vision. You need to be very clear about what you want to do. If you're doing this as a hobby, you will do things that a person in business wouldn't do, take risks that a person in business wouldn't do. So you need to be very clear about what your vision is. And if your vision is to make your business from your backyard be a commercial operation, then that's a different animal altogether. So you need to be very clear about what you want to do. Two, you need to be committed to the process. It's not going to be easy. I know when we have the idea, that passion drives us and everything is possible and we are going at it. And that is good, but there are going to be days when it's going to be tough. When, like we experienced, we allowed some visitors to come into our farm one time, and when they left a week after, all of my produce had a disease, brown spot disease, and we lost the entire greenhouse of produce. And we had to tear everything out, sanitize everything, and start all over again. So you will experience setbacks, but setbacks develop character. Character, if you develop the right kind of character, you develop the ability to sustain. It is going to require a lot of commitment of time, of money, of hours of study, of learning and growing and developing. And most definitely, it is going to call for stubborn perseverance, just refusing to give up. You know, you really can't fail unless you stop trying, because you just keep going and going and going until you figure out how to succeed. Sometimes that's how it works. Um, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid of failure, because failure is actually a great learning tool. If you use it properly and learn from your mistakes, you would have grown from the process of going through the failure, and you would have learned a lot. So failure is actually your friend. Use it wisely though. um, Remain teachable. Never believe that you know everything. You need to keep learning and keep growing and keep adjusting. Once you figure out a formula of how to get things done the way you want them to be done, don't think that that's the only way it will ever be. Be willing to change, improve in technology, invest in expansion, et cetera, et cetera. Don't remain teachable is critical. And lastly, diversify. Um, we started off mainly producing lettuce, but then we realized that, and salad mix. And then we realized that the customer base wanted a broader variety of products. So as you can see here, we produced bell peppers, parsley. We've grown mint, sweet basil, Swiss chard, collard greens, all kinds of stuff. So diversify. Take it easy at the beginning with diversification because you're still learning. But once you get the hang of growing and developing or doing whatever it is that you're doing, then you can gradually diversify. I trust and hope that this presentation was uh, an inspiration to you. And feel free to open your mics and ask a question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jones, for your presentation. We haven't gotten any questions from the attendees or anything from Facebook at this time, but
Sure.
and I can totally understand. Your summation of your whole experience has been fully loaded. So
Mhm.
we have the understanding of the do's, the don'ts, and one of the key things I must say that has been gathered is never give up. Um,
Yes,
because I'm fascinated with your story about the aquaponics
sure.
side of it. And so, because just trying in on another run,
Mm-hmm.
it's so far you've said that it's been the financial issues that have been your main problem with that in terms of what you wanted to do. Is there any other other than the finance? Is there any
Mm-hmm.
other area of that really gave you much trouble in getting it done? Say
Well,
equipment and the ready availability of resources, materials.
yeah, because I pioneered aquaponics here, resources weren't here. Everything I needed, I would have to import. So I couldn't go to the farm supply store and get stuff readily for aquaponics because a lot of the stuff was prepared for soil farming, traditional farming. So getting the resources was a challenge, but it wasn't only the finances. Aquaponics is the ability to manage two different systems: an aquaculture system and a hydroponic system, and causing them to be interdependent of each other. So they're working together. You feed the fish produce the waste, bacteria breaks the waste down, takes it through the nitrogen cycle, releases the nutrients to the plants take those nutrients up out of the water and returns the water to the fish clean for them to live in and live comfortably. The problem is, um, if in my case, because I didn't have enough of capital at that stage to invest in the correct type of filtration system,
Mhm.
we had too much nutrients
Oh,
for the plants. So therefore, the 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 water was not balancing out how it's supposed to be. The nutrient uptake was not as high as it needed to be to keep the water good for the fish, etc. So when you create an imbalance in an aquaponic system, it exposes your produce and potentially the fish to disease pressure. And that is what happened. We ended up with a root rot uh, fungus, really, that caused the roots of the plants in the aquaponic system, in the raft system, to die off. And as a result, the production decreased significantly. And I knew what the problem is. I just couldn't get the funding for the right filtration system. So I had to make a hard decision. I had to decide, am I doing this for the fish or for the veg? And it is in aquaponics, the veg is where you normally make the money. So I said, since I'm in business, I have to make a business decision. So therefore, I cut the fish part out of it, which was very difficult because the reason why I got into aquaponics was the fish. So my heart was on the fish part of it, but the money, which is business, was the vegetable part of it. So I had to make a business decision and then I transitioned to hydroponics. So it was more than just the money. It was the disease pressure that we were experiencing, the slowdown in production as a result of not having the right filtration system and the constant having to try to fight hard to maintain it. Aquaponic system, if it is set up correctly, works very smoothly. There's hardly any hiccups once it starts to balance itself out. As long as you maintain the ratios that you're supposed to maintain, it will work. But if it gets out of balance, you're gonna have a fight on your hands. So that was the
right.
problem. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a question here for you from Facebook. They want to know what difficulties were faced with the tilapia. Did you have any, other than the filtration system, but what difficulties you would have had with that particular fish?
I didn't have many problems with the tilapia other than that the tilapia caused problems. Let me explain what that means. What that means. Tilapia are a species of fish that are survivors. They're determined to reproduce. And we had them stocked at a density that would make it difficult for them to reproduce, but they would still find ways how to reproduce. And the fry would swim up the filtration systems all through the pipes and go through the filtration and end up under the rafts in the grow bed. So they were living under the plants. But tilapia also eat plant vegetation. So what they did was eat all the roots from up under the plants. So they cause havoc. So it was a challenge from that perspective. But in terms of disease and sickness and loss, no, tilapia are very hardy, and they did very, very well. We were very successful with rearing them and causing them to grow to some enormous sizes. We actually used to have the ones we grew for fillets were about 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds. And then I kept a few that I actually grew beyond 6 pounds. They were they were enormous fish, but they did very well. So not many problems with tilapia.
Okay. For one of our viewers, May, she has asked, are there any resources or organizations available to assist? Now, Ms. May, InvestTCI, their micro investment portion, they do have a program available, and Monday session will fill you in a bit more on that. So I'll ask that you tune in during that time. But Mr. Jones, outside of that, were there any resource organizations that you fell upon that would be able to assist persons interested in aquaponics?
Um, yes and no. Let me just explain that. Um, when you pioneer something like aquaponics, it is hard to attract uh, loans from within the country, because not that they wouldn't do it. It's just that they're going to measure the risk as higher than normal because it's a new type of business that
Mm-hmm.
has not been proven yet. So the interest rates were quite high. And so that was a major challenge for me. But there were funding organizations that assisted. We did participate. We have an organization here called Beltrade, which is similar to what you guys are doing here. Um, and they had, what to call it? You had to compete for grant funding. So
Mm-hmm.
there were various projects, and we participated in it, my wife and I, in 2013, and we were one of the winners. But it took you through the whole psych process of doing your lean canvas and everything, and getting everything sorted out so that you thought through the entire process of how your business will run, which I thought was a good thing to do. And we won, and we got a small grant at that time, very small. It wasn't big enough for us to expand, but once we gained that momentum and people began to know about us more, we got connected to other grant funding opportunities, and then I had the opportunity to travel in the Caribbean a little bit, Grenada and Suriname and other places, and did presentations on aquaponics, which I hope would have inspired some people to start those projects in their nations and islands. So initially, it was hard because I was new to the grant funding process.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain language that people who grant funds speak It's a different language than me and the other person sitting down talking. So I had to learn to speak their language, find out what are the areas, the words, the phrases they like to hear. Green, sustainable, and what's the other one? Oh my, I forget the other word, but how to put those words into your presentation so that it's you're speaking their language so they understand what you mean. So that was a learning curve for me. And then learning to here to, I just had to take the risk. If I wanted to pursue this business, I had to get a loan here locally at an interest rate that was not the best, but I persevered and we made it through.
Okay, well, fortunately for those persons that are interested in aquaponics here, that happens to be one of the priority areas in the so you have a better chance. And I think it's from learning about persons like yourself, your experiences, that Invest TCI has been able to build itself along those
Mhm.
lines. We have a question here from Facebook. They want to know what breed of tilapia did you have?
Nilotica, or yeah,
Molottica?
Nilotica or Nile tilapia. But I
Uh-huh.
had the two, I had the red and the gray type. Um, one, this was a play on marketing, being from the Caribbean, at least from Barbados, where I was born, and in Belize. The red tilapia looked a little bit similar to um, red snapper.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little more eye-catching than the gray one. And so hence we use both varieties, but the gray ones actually grew a little bit faster. They were a little bit stockier and the fillets were a lot thicker. So we actually like those a little bit more in terms of the money you can make from them, but the red ones was for the visual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's same fish, tastes the same way, it's the same thing. It's just one is red and one is gray.
Okay, okay. Outside of, well, you're into aquaponics,
Mhm.
hydroponics, sorry, it versus farmland.
Mhm.
Okay, did you ever consider the two? Did you ever had a chance to consider between the two of them?
I'll tell you the truth. I work hard, but I don't like hard work. If you understand what I mean, I do work hard,
I think I know. I think I know.
but to the idea of tilling soil and dealing with nematodes and all kind of pests from the soil was not attractive to me. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be for somebody else, because to each, you have your own interests. For me, I wanted to find a smarter way to farm that would put less pressure on my back. It's easier to harvest, quicker turnaround time. And because of land space, especially in the Caribbean, land is expensive, is seriously expensive. So getting farmland, access to farmland could be quite a hindrance. So I wanted to be able to make my backyard space a commercial farm. So it meant that I would need to produce large volumes of produce in a small space. So hydroponics and aquaponics was the way to do it. So no bias really against land farming. It was just my preference. But both are very productive if you know what you're doing. It's just hydroponics and aquaponics, the produce will grow quite faster in smaller spaces. So if, for instance, a head of romaine lettuce in soil would probably take 8, 9 weeks to grow to full size. In aquaponics or hydroponic system, it's about 6 to 7 weeks. So you save like 2 weeks.
Right.
So for a business person, that's significant.
Okay, what about nutrient feed to the water? How expensive can that be?
Actually, well, for aquaponics, the
Mm-hmm.
nutrients would come from the fish,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but the fish can only put out what you put into the fish. So let me
Because it's
explain.
the
Yes,
cycle.
so yeah, so if you feed the fish bread and rice, they'll eat it, but the level of nutrients from that food source is not going to be very high. But when you feed the fish, in my case, tilapia, a commercial tilapia feed with specific nutrient ratios, when they release that waste, lots of nutrients are still locked up in the solid waste. So when a nitrification process happens, you get all kinds of nutrients and macronutrients, micronutrients, and all those things that you wouldn't get from rice and bread.
Mm-hmm.
So what you put into the fish, you'll get out. Now for hydroponics, we import the nutrients, and it is actually not that expensive. For me here, when I used to raise the fish, I'd have to pay like 100 and these are Belize dollars. Let me convert it to US. We would pay about 70 60 to 70 US for a 100-pound bag of tilapia feed, which would be finished with the amount of fish I had, would be finished in about uh, a month and a half, about 6 to 8 weeks, um, or a little less. When I buy um, nutrients, the nutrients that I mix, it will last me for the same money about twice as long. So it makes it's cheaper to buy hydroponic nutrients than actually um, the
Incorporating the both.
yeah, yeah. So
But it seems that you have a passion for the aquaponics though. So
oh, it's still there. It's still burning.
we've got a question here. Outside of that, I mean, whether you're in the soil or you're using water, you need nutrients. But then whether you're in the soil and the water, you also have outside pests like
Mhm,
different white flies and caterpillars and different
mhm.
bugs. What problems did you face along those lines?
Um, Not as much as a person growing in the soil would face, simply
Mhm,
because I use greenhouse structures. So in the
mhm,
greenhouse structure, you have plastic on the top and insect screen around the sides. Now, this is insect screen specific for greenhouses. The size of the holes are very, very tiny. But as you rightfully said, whitefly was a continual challenge that I deal with, and spider mites. Spider mites are some red, they look like red pieces of dust, but they'll suck everything out of your plants and you won't even realize it until the plants start looking weird. And when you look really close on the leaf or under the bottom of the leaf, you see a lot of little red dots. Those things are just sucking the plants dry. So um, I don't have as large of a pest pressure on my crops as people growing in soil would because of the protection of the structure. It's a covered structure. But when I do, um, we we look for ways to treat them as organically as we can. And let me qualify that statement. Um, we would use stuff. I remember we use what you call it, vinegar um, in water and stuff, mix little homemade brews and spray on the leaves to deal with fungus and other white flies and other stuff. If that didn't work, we'd step it up a bit. We'll hit them with neem oil, which is a natural oil coming from a plant. But then if we can't find a way how to really get rid of them because there's such a risk to the production, then you'll have to hit them with something chemical. But the chemical part of it is short term. So it's kind of like killing the whole colony, and then you don't use it again for a long time. So when a person growing in soil will have to spray probably every month or 6 weeks to keep the pests down, then we could hit them once, twice, or 3 times a year instead of once every 6 weeks.
Okay. We have another question here. Someone wants to know how many fish you were able to carry in your 1,000-gallon tanks.
All right, tell them don't do this. I'll tell them the truth, but I'm telling them don't do this unless you get some training, because I stocked them pretty high. Hence, I had the filtration problem. I had usually they would be stocked anywhere from 500 to 250 fish per tank. And let me explain. 500 would be the ratio I used to work with. I did not want the biomass in the tank, meaning the fish weight in the volume of water, to be more than 1 pound of fish to 2 gallons of water. So if you have 500 fish in a 1,000-gallon tank, you can't allow them to grow to 2 pounds. You can only allow them to grow to 1 pound, and then you harvest them out. But if I cut that down to 250 fish per 1,000-gallon tank, then I could allow those fish to grow to 2 pounds and a little bit. So they were stocked pretty high. 500 fish per tank for a 1,000-gallon tank is pretty high density. So don't do that unless you know what you're doing, or else you can start causing disease pressure to hit your fish. But we did very well. We had very few deaths. If fish died, it was mostly because we killed them by mistake. Let me explain. Initially, when we started, we had a blower that would blow through the pipes, the PVC pipes, and aerate the fish tanks. But because we wanted to monitor the fish, we would turn off the blower while we're feeding the fish so we can see the activity of the fish, if they're sluggish, if they're moving around, and we can get to learn their behavior and habits. Now, sometimes we forgot that it was off.
Oh, no.
Turned it, and didn't turn it on till a half an hour later. And because the density was so high in the fish tanks, the oxygen ran out really fast. And then you'll see the fish on the top of the water and the mouths going on top of the water. That means the oxygen deprived. So we made some of those mistakes, and it was painful, but those were few and far in between, but we did make those kind of mistakes.
Yeah. I'd like to hear like some of the different methods that you've used, the methods that you use in terms of your hydroponic layouts. I see you have grow beds, and then I also noticed that you've used PVC and guttering and the like. Yeah. Is it because certain plants grow better in certain conditions, or?
No, it is a matter of trying to utilize this space as efficiently as I can. In the utilizing the space efficiently, if you grow vertically, you can grow more plants vertically because there's a lot of space between the roof of the greenhouse and where the actual leaves of the plants are. So hence you would see plants growing on systems like this. It's like a pipe that's hanging down and the plants growing in here and water is feeding down. So that's why we use a vertical system to get more production in the same footprint. So the greenhouse didn't have to get bigger, but we started to grow upwards and we got more production. So we had moved from, I think we were doing Right at the beginning, we were probably doing somewhere about 12 to 1500 heads in the first greenhouse, and then we went vertical, and then we started to hit closer to 3,000. So we more or less doubled that capacity with just utilizing vertical production. So that's one of the reasons we use vertical production. Another system that you saw was the PVC pipes horizontally,
Mm-hmm.
the 4-inch PVC pipe. That particular system design uh, was used because of the type of plants we grow in there. We grow stuff like kale and Swiss chard and other products in there with a lot of root system. And because electricity can go off and on sometimes, we wanted to make sure that even when the electricity goes off and the pump stops running, because the pump would pump the water, nutrients around and around and around. They'll go to the plants and then drain back into a collection tank and then repeat the cycle. But if the pump went off, there would still be water in those 4-inch PVC pipes. So electricity being off for days wouldn't really harm them in any
Mm-hmm.
way. So that's another reason we use that particular system. And then the other one that we grew vertically that you saw in the big greenhouse, that's called an NFT system, nutrient film technique system. And that's the system we decided to invest in for mass hydroponic production. That's where we usually grow most of our lettuce because the turnaround is really quick. So from seed to harvest is 6 weeks.
Okay. So you use pumps to distribute the water to the vertical systems and the like. So because someone
Mhm.
was asking about that, you've answered that already. But another question here is, how did you control algae growth?
And you just shade your, you shade the, you call it a sump tank or your collection tank
Mm-hmm.
where the nutrients return. You keep that shaded from direct sunlight, and that will manage your algae quite well. When you start initially with the PVC pipes, you may have some initial um, algae growth, but once the plants fall out, they'll naturally just block the hole from sunlight, and you won't have an issue with major algae growth.
We're running up on that time now. We're going to be shutting
Mhm.
down at 7:30.
Sure.
Um, I don't see any further questions. Let me just make sure. But Mr. Jones, with your wealth of knowledge, there must be some words that you can impart upon our listeners. And for well, this is being recorded as well, so persons are going to view it outside of this sphere here. So, but are there any words of encouragement? Any resources that you can further give us at this time?
Yeah, my word would be one, to know what you're passionate about. Don't lie to yourself. Don't chase money, because you can end up chasing money and end up doing things that you hate to do just to get money, and it will be a miserable life. Find things that you are passionate about, that you can enjoy doing, because no matter what you do, it's going to require work. It's going to require hard work to succeed. Whether you're passionate or you hate it, it's still going to require work. So if I'm going to work hard, I better enjoy what I'm doing. So that's one. And two, educate yourself. Don't just jump into it because you watch one YouTube video with somebody doing it, or you even watch my presentation and think, oh, it looks easy. Well, it's easy until you do it and realize that there are things that you didn't think about. So hence, educating yourself helps you to be able to look at all the possibilities of the challenges that you will face and find solutions for the problems that will arise. Problems will arise. I was trained and problems arose, and I had to figure them out. But what I dropped back on was my training. Hydroponics and aquaponics is a science. If you function within the parameters of what is required to have a successful aquaponics or hydroponic system, you will find safety. But once you start going outside those lines, you will run into trouble. So if you don't know where the lines are, you cannot succeed. So training is necessary. And then I would also say, um, manage debt carefully. Debt is not a bad word, but it is not anything to be trifled with. You need, if you're going to do it with a plan, and a plan how to get out of it as fast as you can, because it can become a noose around your neck. So just manage debt carefully and start small.
Now,
Start small and
I know I said you had one for one, that was it, and but we had one more question. It looks like somebody's
Sure.
really considering this hydroponics. They want to know, what did you do to control the water temperature with the with lettuce?
All right, so there are various approaches. One, you can, like my big system, the return tank, the pipes run underground, so they don't get direct sunlight to warm them up. The tank is sunk into the ground, so we dug a big hole, dropped a 1,500 gallon, we cemented it, and then dropped a 1,500 gallon tank in there. And we built a covering over the tank, so the tank never gets direct sunlight. So that helps to maintain the temperature. In the tropics, we get pretty hot. So you can use various tricks like that, but ultimately, water temperature in the tropics is going to be a battle, so you have to be really smart with it.
Hey, I hope that answered that question there. Mr. Jones, it's been a pleasure hearing from you. I wish you and your wife much success in your endeavors. And on behalf of those of us at TCI Backyard Farmers, would like to thank you, sir, for your contribution. And I'd like to thank those persons, our attendees, and those watching via Facebook. And ask that you join us again for our final session, which is on this week, Monday, same time, 6:30. And we're going to be speaking with Ms. Cheryl McLaughlin, and she is of Invest TCI, and she will be giving you further information as to how to go about presenting your proposals to TCI Invest. So, Mr. Jones, once again, thank you. All right,
Thank you.
that's it.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.